we're seeing an increase in the frequency and severity of a number of disasters. The weather-related disasters, climate and weather-related disasters, have doubled in the last 4 decades. And increasingly, these disasters are linked to food insecurity, the displacement of populations as a result of that, and even conflict. And we've seen this in a number of places. In Syria, prolonged drought leading to displacement of 1.5 million people. We've seen this in Darfur. We've seen this in terms of the Arab Spring, as I mentioned at the conference here in Stockholm. The first thing, there are many ways we can start talking about resolving conflict with politics and involving women in communities, but if we focus on the environmental risks, the links between environmental degradation, climate change, and conflict, then fundamentally we have to start by reducing greenhouse gases as a matter of urgency, because the inertia in the climate system means that the gases, the greenhouse gases we've released already, will continue to warm for decades and decades. And so even if we stopped now entirely, the planet would continue to warm. We'd have more drought, more extreme weather, more impacts on food security, displacement, and conflict. So we have to move quickly. It's not as if we can wait till it gets really noticeably bad and then act. It will be too late. Disasters are fundamentally about cities, because it's in cities that we have large concentrations of people and assets. So the loss of life is huge, and with challenges like sea level rise and storm surge, it's coastal cities and communities which are particularly at risk, but in cities in general, flood risk is enormous and growing rapidly in many, many different cities around the world. So it's in cities where the full impacts in terms of loss of life and, but more importantly, economic and the huge economic costs are most visible, and it's also therefore where the solutions to reducing disaster risk lie. Practical solutions in cities. There are, I mentioned a few at the conference here at SIPRI, because people generally assume that communities, small towns and cities and communities need huge influxes of funding to reduce the risk of disasters, like building seawalls or the like. But a lot of the steps can be relatively low cost. They can be involving the community in evacuation exercises. They can be early warning systems that can be put in place that can be used at a regional level to help many, many cities. So the economies of scale are great. There are very low-tech solutions to reducing disaster risk that we've seen in developing countries. I mentioned Vietnam. In parts of the Mekong, which are now flooding regularly, communities are building mounds to which they're evacuating their livestock, and as a way of protecting them from the floods. That's a very simple technique. Similarly, with planting in drought conditions, there are different ways of planting that involve mulching, that involve water capture, that are really effective in helping communities become more resilient to, say, drought and extreme weather. But there are many, many examples around the world. Of course, this peace and conflict agenda is now very wide, because there's so many factors that are influencing the outbreak of war, the exacerbation of war and conflict, including the environmental ones that I've mentioned. So when SIPRI convenes a conference, it's a huge opportunity to benefit from the wide SIPRI community, but also many other experts who are attracted to that, to attend and participate in these meetings.